Today I'm going to answer the question I get a lot, and that is, do the islands close in the off season and do islands close in the winter? The short answer is no. The Greek islands are not theme parks. They don't have like admission. You don't need a ticket to get in. And in most cases, even the really small islands have some sort of year-round population that lives there all the year long. So it kind of depends. And that's the answer. It depends. It depends on which island you're going to, what time of the year you're going to go in terms of off-season or winter. So one thing is it depends on which island you're going to go to. So if you're going to, say, Santorini, it's probably not going to really start to show that things are closing until the end of October. It does depend maybe on where on Santorini you're going. Maybe some of the smaller villages that don't get as many tourists, things will start to close. Although I have found that in small villages, there's a large enough population there to support restaurants and things, so they don't always close. So again, it depends. But some islands that are really popular still close a little bit earlier in the season. So take, for example, Ios. Ios is an extremely popular island with university students in the summer, particularly in July and August, even into September, because university in Europe doesn't start until October. But that plays part of the reason that they don't stay open. One, all their tourist people are leaving, but also a lot of the people that come to the Greek islands in the summer to work are university students. So they need to go back either to Athens where they're going to school, or if they're from another European country, they need to go home so they can prepare to start school. So it kind of depends. So if you're going to an island that's, say, near Athens, it may not be as much affected because those islands have a little bit larger year-round population, because it's a lot easier for people who live in Athens but also have a house there to go back and forth. So let's say here in Naxos. Naxos is a popular island, and it's October now here, and it is still pretty busy. It's not like August busy, but it's pretty decent, and the restaurants still have people in them. But a lot of restaurant people and hotel people have worked all summer. They've not taken any days off, starting probably in May, and they will probably start to close some of the restaurants down by the end of October. I've actually already seen several restaurants close. They're just either not busy enough or they're just tired. It also means that sometimes, like, restaurants that have sunbeds and umbrellas on the beach will take those away because they don't want to deal with that anymore. They need to start packing up for the season. So again, it just depends. It depends on what time and what island of the year that you come to. In terms of like the start date and the end date of the summer season here in Greece, usually it starts around May 15th and it ends, depending on where you are, either in the middle of September, the end of September, or if you're in a popular place like Santorini or here in Naxos, usually the end of October. So what closes? You've heard me talk a lot about restaurants closing because a lot of the restaurants are seasonal and they're only open in the summer. Now, what I've seen lately, and I see this every year, is restaurants will decide that they are going to stay open, but they're only going to open for dinner. So usually that means they will either open at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. and then close when the last person shows up. So if you're coming, there will always be somewhere probably to eat for lunch. It just may not be a really fancy sit-down place. Not that a lot of places here are fancy, but a little bit nicer than, say, a sandwich shop. So you might want to be prepared for that. If you wanted to eat a nice taverna meal for every lunch as well as dinner, you may have to rethink your plans if you're coming later than October or earlier than May. You either need to be prepared to make yourself a sandwich in your hotel or just prepare for a little bit more casual lunch. Sometimes hotels close. Even the hotel in Ios that I am good friends with that I stayed at earlier this year, they usually close the first week of October. And then on the more popular islands like Santorini and here in Naxos, they'll start to close at the end of October. Now, there are year-round hotels on the island. It's just a lot less. So if you're doing research to come to an island in the winter, you need to find out whether or not the place that you want to stay in is going to be open in the winter. If you're making these plans and it's already winter, say you've decided you want to come in February and it's January and you're emailing the hotel and they're not emailing you back, that's a really good sign that they're not open. Sometimes that happens in the summer too. Greeks are not a big fan, not all of them, but some of them are not big fans of technology. Another good thing is if you're booking, say, through a website like booking.com, most of the hotels will just close the ability to make a reservation. So you won't even be able to make a reservation. And that's a pretty good sign. Like, I learned this one year. I was trying to make a reservation for a place and I was like, why isn't it letting me make a reservation for October 15th? And that was because the hotel was closed for the winter. So this is really important actually to know if you're going to a small island where there aren't that many hotels, because if they don't know that people are coming, they may close for the winter. Like, I know the hotel of my friend in Eos, sometimes he'll say, oh, okay, well, we're getting a lot of requests for the middle of October, so we'll stay up until October 15th. But unless you're asking about it pretty far in advance, like a month, I'm not talking like 6 months in advance, they're not going to stay open because they don't know people are interested. So if you have your heart set on a particular hotel, then you need to email them as soon as you know that you want to come. The other question I get, and sometimes it can be tricky to figure this out, is about the ferries in the off season and the winter. So I had someone message me here on YouTube the other day that they couldn't find a ferry from Athens to Santorini for, I think it was like the middle of November. And when I was really curious because I couldn't find anything either. So I emailed one of the ferry ticket operators that I use, which is ferryhopper.com. I'll include a link below. That is an affiliate link. I use them all the time, and they got back to me right away and said that the ferry schedules for November were not going to be released until the first week of October. Being that it's Greece, I thought, okay, we'll see if that happens, and it didn't. So I checked on Friday. There were still no ferry schedules to be found for November from Athens to Santorini. But I will say that usually the big islands, at least, they get at least one ferry a day in the winter. Now, if you're going to a small island, let's say Eos or Anafi is actually probably a better example. Even in the high season, the ferry only comes 2 or 3 days a week. So, and that doesn't account for whether or not the ferry may or may not get canceled because of the next topic I'm going to talk about. So if you are going to a big island, don't worry about it. If you really want to come in the winter and you don't want to take the ferry, then fly. Most of the larger islands, Santorini, Naxos, Paros, Mykonos, things like that, they all have an airport. And you're less likely to have your transportation get canceled because of weather. Because weather is the other thing that tends to be a little bit variable once we hit October. Usually the rainy season doesn't really start in Greece until January, but starting in October, the wind starts to get really bad in some places. In fact, in Naxos for about a week, we had really strong north wind. It made it very cool here. I did not go swimming that week because it was too cold. And then one day over the weekend, the wind changed, started coming from the south, and it was suddenly 80 degrees that day. And now it's very humid because it's trying to rain. So you kind of don't know what you're gonna get if you come in the off season, and if you're really looking for a beach holiday, then that might be a problem because you're not necessarily gonna go to the beach when it's raining, or if the wind is really awful. I personally don't want to sit on the beach and get like pelted with sand. October is probably still pretty safe. There's still going to be enough days where it's warm enough for you to either go to the beach and swim or at least go and be outside. Once that happens, then you kind of need to shift the focus of your vacation. That's kind of my next point, is that the off season and the winter are still really nice times to come, especially if your focus isn't on going to the beach. A lot of the islands have really great hiking. And most of the trails here in the islands are marked. If you don't mind the cold, if you're from, say, the UK, then the cold water might not bother you, and you may go swimming until, I know Greeks that swim all winter long. So you may still be able to swim depending on what you're used to. I'm from Texas where the water is pretty warm, and I've lived in the Caribbean and the Middle East, so I like my water a little bit warmer. Another advantage is there are a lot less people. That means the prices are cheaper when it comes to accommodation. So that's a really nice factor. Even like ferry tickets are pretty much always the same price, but flights are usually a lot less expensive. Some islands are still nice in the winter. Crete is one of them. It's so far south that even though it does have winter, it's definitely not as cold as it is in the rest of Greece. It may also apply to Santorini and some of the islands that are further south near Turkey, like Kos and Rhodes. I haven't been there myself, but I've heard that it is warmer there in the winter than in the rest of Greece. So you can definitely find warmer spots in the Greek islands in the winter or in the off season. I hope this answered your questions about whether or not the Greek islands close in the off season or in the winter. If not, leave me a comment below and I'll get back to you. I will see you guys in the next video.